we talked briefly about it, but I want to kind of dive in a little bit more on this improv for trial thing.
Sure.
I have some personal experience with it, but starting from the beginning, if, some of our viewers don't have any knowledge or experience or understanding of what that is or what you do with the improv for trial with Joseph Limbaugh, give us a kind of a brief explanation for what it is and kind of how it came to be.
Sure. Well, I'll give you a little history of me. So I was a kid actor growing up, and I even had like loose improv training as a little kid, like kid actor, commercial actor and theater and all that kind of stuff. Then when I went to law school, I started doing trial advocacy, and I realized I was like, this is theater. And I got heavily involved in improvisation. I met an improv teacher who really understood it. And that's when I said, oh, this is what I need to really hone. The legal stuff is one thing, but this is a show. And, it's kind of happening in the moment. So I started developing that. And many years ago, probably like 15, 18 years ago, I started putting this program together where just teaching the rules of improvisational theater. Everybody's heard of the Groundlings or Second City or, how you're making...
Whose line is it anyways?
Whose line is it anyway? Where you're taking suggestions from the audience and then, justifying it, and it looks like it's scripted. And so people hear improv and then they get scared. Oh, I can't do that. I'm gonna screw up. I'm gonna look like a fool.
Or it's gonna put me in a really embarrassing situation where I'm gonna have to start barking like a dog or doing something crazy.
That's the whole point.
Right.
Failing is okay. Don't do your best, because no matter what happens in a trial, something is going to happen unexpected,
right?
And something is going to go wrong.
Especially from the beginning with jury selection, which is, from my experience, the most feared aspect of the trial for any attorney who's trying to learn how to become a trial attorney or prepare for the courtroom. When you're first getting into the courtroom, the jury selection process is the most sort of daunting mentally, because you can't script what the potential jurors are going to say. And that's what drives so much fear for a lot of lawyers. Can you speak to that?
Well, first of all, you're looking at these people. You don't have a clue what these people are going to say. And then you hear the craziest stories.
Because the folks that are trying to get off the jury.
Well, not only that,
they're Googling the night before, how do I get off a jury? And then they say the most outlandish stuff possible.
I'm not worried about those people. I'm worried about the honest people that are just telling me, oh, this is what happened in my life, or who I am, or what makes me tick. Once you get them to tip my hat to Nick Rowley, be brutally honest with you and really talk to you, then you start hearing like the truth. If you can get real truth out of these people, you're like, holy crap, how do I deal with this? And we spent a lot of time in our class with your group of incredibly talented trial lawyers. You're very lucky to have the crew that you have. Status. You remember status?
Sure.
How to communicate, and we could spend months talking about status, but once you understand status and understand how to connect with jurors in a profound way, you're going to win the trial the majority of the time during this jury selection process.
Right.
And, winning is relative, obviously, but just being able to harness that and not be afraid. My favorite part of the case is jury selection. It's like, that's my dinner party. Let's go and have a cocktail hour. Right. That's really, if you approach it that way and just erase the fear.
Right.
It's natural to have fear, Improv allows you to not worry about falling off the tightrope.
Right.
And so what if something goes wrong? It's how you rebound from it.
Yeah.
And how you make it look seamless, which is the hardest part.
Sure.
And it's the best part, because once you get comfortable doing that, nothing in the trial can, I mean, except for your client saying, I'm faking it,
Right.
Is going to hurt you. And the defense really, there's very few lawyers that are capable of combating that. Very few.
Or understanding the nuance of what's going on.
Yeah, I mean,
They have kind of their preset way of trying the case.
Right.
That, has worked for them over the years, but it's pretty rigid, and it's not designed to, have any type of flexibility or the ability to pivot off of what we're doing on our side.
They're by the book, we're throw the book out. That's how I approach it. And I do wacky stuff during my case.
Right.
Game shows and radio shows or puppet shows or cooking demonstrations. And in this Uber trial, I did a commercial at the end. I don't know if you heard about it.
Oh. Your closing argument?
In my closing. So, there's always I'm knocking on the door and the client opens the door and sees me. I'm from the future, I'll pay you $20 million if you go on a run and get hit by a car. Right. That's one approach. It works. It's good. But I did something a little bit different. I said, in my rebuttal, I said, I have a way that Uber can fix this. I stayed up all night, and it came to me, and I know how Uber can, they have Uber Eats and DoorDash and Uber and all this stuff. Uber time machine. And then I went into a commercial, which I could read for you. But it was basically, I could read it for you.
Sure.
Okay. Well, give me a second here. Hold on a second. I'll find it. Uber time machine.
I wonder if Uber's going to roll this out as a new product since you've
let's get on the
conveniently pitched it for them to a Santa Monica jury.
Let's get the IPO and do this. You ready? Yeah, I'm ready. Introducing Uber Time Machine, the revolutionary app that transcends time. Tired of living with regrets? Wish you could rewrite history? With Uber Time Machine, now you can. Simply download the app, enter your desired destination in the past, and let our cutting-edge technology transport you back in time. Whether you want to relive your glory days, undo past mistakes, or prevent that embarrassing moment from ever happening, Uber Time Machine has you covered. Forget about being late for that important meeting or missing out on life-changing opportunities. With Uber Time Machine, time is no longer a barrier. Revisit cherished memories, right wrongs, or simply enjoy the thrill of exploring different eras. The possibilities are endless, and don't worry about disrupting the space-time continuum. Our expert team of temporal engineers ensures a smooth and seamless journey every time. So why wait? Download Uber Time Machine now and start rewriting your story today. After all, time waits for no one except for Uber Time Machine users.
I love it.
You know how much it costs to get a ride on the Uber Time Machine?
$6.8 million.
That's right. $6.8 million.
Yeah.
And so, you see the jury nodding. We also had, we did all kinds of, I had an Uber ride video from the moment he left the scene in an ambulance for the next 5.5 years. And it was an Uber ride.
Mm-hmm.
From the moment the crash happened until the day of the closing argument, and how much that Uber ride costs. And we said, there's no app. This is not a trial by AI. It's not a trial by algorithm. It's a trial by humans.
Right.
And Uber doesn't get to set the price. You do.
Yep. Empowering the jury.
Absolutely. And so, we use these. This was setting them up for this along the way. And I don't know, you've seen what I do with the illustrative drawings.
Yes.
I did that in this case. I have them. I could show them to you. Where I have an artist that basically illustrates the trial. And that's what I start my closing with, to bring the jurors right back to all that testimony by showing them the imagery. And it really connects them with, the emotional side of the case.
Sure.
Because that's really what drives,
story.
The story. It's the up. Remember we discussed in our improv class, Up, the movie?
Right.
It's the heart. If you don't care about the person, then, what good is this money?
Right.
And it was nice. It was a great jury. I had a good jury. They were very smart. It's Santa Monica jury. They're fickle. They're not downtown juries. They're different.
Yeah. The last Santa Monica jury I had, I think there was 3 lawyers, an accountant, and a Pepperdine professor on the jury.
Yeah. I had a similar kind of panel.
Yeah. So you get educated folks and,
I had no Uber drivers in my pool.
Interesting.
I had one. I had Uber users. And they all, had their feelings, mostly bad, about Uber.
Right.
And the one driver was like, whatever. He was off for cause right away. I think it would have been a different approach if I had to do this case downtown with people who are Uber drivers.
Right.
So, again, speaking of preparing, you can't prepare for your jury. There's zero preparing for that.
Well, especially in the PI hub, at least the remnant of it that's filtering its way through the system, where you show up for trial and you don't know where you're going to be sent. You don't know what trial judge you're getting and what venue you're getting. That makes it, I imagine, even more valuable to implement some of these improv for trial techniques, because some of the key components of preparing for trial, like what's my jury pool, who's my trial judge, those don't get thrown on you until the day of trial after 2, 3, 4, 5 years of litigation. And you have to react, and you have to pivot, and you have to make decisions quickly, and you have to strategize based on this last minute, really, really important information. Can you speak to that?
I'm going to make an analogy, because when I walk around your incredible office, I see all these sports memorabilia stuff. And, I know you love sports.
Sure.
You're a big football guy. You're the coach. You're Belichick, okay? And you're watching game film and you're getting ready, right? That's what you do.
Sure.
And you have a courtroom here, and I know you do focus groups.
Yeah.
And you can focus these trials all you want. But if you don't add the rolling of the dice, the improv unknown to that process, it doesn't matter what happens when you show up and some crazy SHIT goes down that you can't plan for.
Right.
And so that's the factor. So when we do our focus groups,
it's like showing up to play the Super Bowl and they don't tell you where you're playing or who the referees are until the day of the game or something.
Right. Or instead of a football, you have a round ball. They're like, okay, you're gonna play the game with this now.
Right.
But we've been practicing with this. Doesn't matter. Figure it out. Or you're not allowed to use your hands. That's ridiculous. But that's one of the exercises that we used to do. Remember?
Sure.
The no S game, the no T's. Just taking away things from us that we're so used to, that we rely on, like our words. Gibberish. We spent, 2 weeks just talking in gibberish. People don't understand it until you realize how important being able to communicate without words is. Right. Those types of things, those are elements of what we teach that make the story so important. And the way you communicate and the way you are delivering the message. And also, you got to see what this jury is ready for. I can't do a puppet show I couldn't do a puppet show with this jury, but I could do the Uber time machine concept with them. They were really smart. And, Santa Monica jurors are like, these lawyers aren't going to, get something by me.
Right.
They're too smart. So you got to be careful, who your audience is. And not that I could fool somebody with a puppet show. That jury was ready for that.
Yeah. You got to know your audience.
Exactly. Does that answer your question?
It does. It does. And, beyond that, how do you think your improv for trial skill set has evolved over the last, let's say, 5 to 10 years?
Well, I'm going to flip it on you first.
Okay.
What was the most valuable thing you, as the coach and leader of your team, you got from the class?
So I would say, for me personally, it was understanding some of the underlying concepts of improv, and kind of putting a name to some of the things that maybe inherently I was already doing, but understanding that there's actually a name for it and a structure behind it, and understanding what it really is, to be able to utilize it a little bit better. For me personally, I think that was a big thing. For example, the whole status thing was really eye-opening for me. From a team leader standpoint, having my attorneys at my firm go through it, I think one of the biggest benefits was being able to put my folks in uncomfortable situations and having them have to react and, get through that. That creates growth.
And you're in the same uncomfortable situation with them.
Right.
Which I was super impressed by. The fact that, you're the boss, you're there, but then you're playing along with them and everybody's in the same boat.
Right.
And that's scary.
Right.
But did it make you, because I saw your, the stars rising from this group. I mean, did you know even the potential that your attorneys had?
Yeah, I think so. But I think one of the things that I think I saw was, you talk about the sports analogies, like, we always see the game-winning buzzer-beating shot, but you don't see the 100,000 shots in the gym practicing when no one's looking, right? So there's a certain element of like the reps, right? And so, focus groups is a way to get reps in, because you're not always going to be in trial.
Right. It's working out the muscles.
But you're working out the muscles. And so it creates a level of, I think, personal confidence in people that take the class where, hey, if I can survive the gibberish exercise, and I can survive, the exercise where I can't use certain letters of certain words, and I can survive this exercise, and I can get through that and maybe even have a little success with it, more so than I thought I was going to have going in. I think it breeds some confidence just personally in the people that went through the class to say, well, if I can get through that, then I can get through,
anything.
A call where a defense attorney is, trying to grill me on this, or I'm a oral argument on a hearing where a judge is questioning me on that, or, all these different, confrontational scenarios that we find ourselves in the practice of law, that many times, the difference between successful attorneys and less successful attorneys is experience and having been through the fire and having seen things along the way and having those reps under your belt. So I think it creates a confidence that, you kind of have this Teflon layer of like, it doesn't really matter what gets thrown at me, I can handle it. And so I think I saw that from my team a little bit, coming out of the class.
So to answer your question, over the last 10, 15 years, how was it? I literally, this is my improv show. So, I've been doing improv shows for 30 years, getting up and doing This is an improv show for me. And the suggestion is my client's case. Okay, and we're going to do it. And I have somebody, by the way, one of the other attorneys with me, who's also an expert in improv, because we speak this now secret language together. And then we teach the techniques to our clients too.
Right.
And, the experts also need to understand, how to connect with jurors. And that's what I've learned is I'm not afraid anymore. I used to be when I would get the flop sweat and all that stuff. But now it's just, okay, this is, there's very high stakes, but
Sure.
I know going in, like, there's no situation I can't justify or resolve. Of course, it's going to be up to 12 jurors to see whether they
Right.
believe in our case. But I know the way we're going to tell the story is going to be the most impactful story we can tell.
Yep. Absolutely.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Now, when we talk about your improv for trial class that you've developed over the years, it's to teach improvisational theater techniques for trial lawyers.
Correct.
Currently, what are the typical types of lawyers that contact you that have interest in the program?
Okay. First of all, I mainly teach it to plaintiff attorneys.
Okay.
Except recently, we taught a group of 25 lawyers from a probate firm.
Interesting.
Okay? And they're not typically in trial. And they were, after teaching the class, Joseph and I looked at each other and we're like, wow, this was incredible because how useful it was for them. And
why did they go down the road of signing up for the class? What was it that they thought was going to be beneficial for their practice?
I think they had no idea what it would do. And that was the best part. They were open to it. And it allowed them to, learn the secret language together, and allowed them to, because they're still telling stories. He was one of the fascinating stories I got from that class. So probate, they had, you had a case where there were two brothers that were fighting over this huge estate. And the brothers were like burning through the estate because they were going at war with each other. And we found out through it that at the mediation where they were trying to settle the matter, that one brother was mad at his other brother because when they were 7 and 9, the one brother pushed his brother off a boat. And it was this trauma for him.
He just held this grudge.
For all these years. And when they figured out like that's what it was, and they were able to resolve the case. And that led us into this whole discussion.
The one brother got the boat, I imagine.
Yeah, exactly. But it resolved it. I mean, it was a status war between them. And again, if you don't know what status is, this is kind of like a weird concept, but for them to approach the way they tell the story of their client and how to resolve things and just getting information from their clients, learning how to talk to them and extract information, building trust, all those, things that you learn during our process was super valuable to them. They still, of course, they do trials and they tell stories. A lot of them are bench trials, but still with a judge, they're humans.
Yeah.
I don't care what they say, because I did a bench trial with Chance Bardone, great trial lawyer, and we did our thing, during the bench trial. And after, the judge was like, Mr. Pryor, you don't have to do all this razzle dazzle. Meanwhile, we got a great result. They don't know what's influencing their decision. It works.
Right.
You're still having a human interaction, even with a judge, especially with a judge, because they've seen it all. And when I do my jury trials, the judges are usually like entertained by this, and in those cases, they're not the decision maker. But again, when they're the decision maker and they see this stuff going on, they don't want to feel like they're being, influenced by the performance of the attorneys. Absolutely, they are. I mean, again, you have to feel whether your audience is buying what you're doing.
Right.
But I think it's a great factor. I don't know where this answer came from or what.
No, it's great. It's just about trying to, I was just trying to dig in for you, like what you're seeing in terms of the types of attorneys that are coming through that have an interest in developing this skill set.
I think every attorney, young or old, experienced or brand new, should be at least experimenting with this. I'm going to Gary Dordick's trial college in a couple weeks. There's going to be super experienced attorneys there like yourself. I mean, when you did it, then you've been like kind of, wow, this is cool stuff.
Yeah.
And you can learn from it. And we always have to be learning. And
well, that's what I was going to say. It's interesting because in my experience in our profession, in our industry, it's kind of a little bit of a misnomer to say, an experienced trial attorney or an inexperienced trial attorney, because what I've found is the best trial attorneys are the ones who are constantly pushing themselves to learn and grow and continue to develop and aren't like set in a specific way of doing it. And then they say, oh, that's it. I'm locked in it, and so a lot of these trial skills type classes, when you talk about your improv for trial, or you talk about, Nick Rowley's trial by human workshops, or you talk about, Jerry Spence, the ranch, the whole, Spence method. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of others, there's Keith Mitnick,
Lanier,
don't eat the bruises, mm-hmm. Mark Lanier. You got, Dan Ambrose doing case analysis, Trojan horse, all that stuff. TLU, exactly. It's not just for new lawyers. It's for
all lawyers,
experienced, well-accomplished trial attorneys that, continue to push themselves to get better and to learn new techniques and to understand themselves better. And I understand you have in your office space now a built out kind of theater space where you can run in-person improv classes.
Yes.
So how much of what you're doing right now with your improv for trial is that in-person piece at your office versus still doing some stuff over Zoom?
So we teach attorneys across the country. Mm-hmm. So we had, in our last class, we had 2 from Ohio, 2 from Connecticut, 2 from California, 1 from Minnesota, all in one Zoom class. Mm-hmm. Yours, we had because it was during COVID, right. Everybody from LA. So obviously, if they're across the country, we're doing that by Zoom.
Sure.
But people in LA now can come to the theater, and it's just a different experience to do it in person. I prefer in person, quite frankly, because you can do different exercises that you can't do on Zoom. But the Zoom class also it's very intimate because when you see yourself on the big screen, there's something about that too. It's tight. Your facial expressions become even more subtle.
Right. You almost have a mirror right in front of your face.
And so, they're both great, but I'd love to hear your experience after you come in live and we do it in person versus the improv that we did.
And I imagine the in-person thing also has a transference of a lot of, relevancy to trial practice, being in a courtroom, being up on your feet in front of folks, sort of that in-person interaction that you can't mimic or recreate on Zoom.
Well, you can move around the room and use your body using space work,
Right.
You've seen me ever do this? You know what this is? My mind eraser. I use this on jurors all the time. Erase their brain. Did that work? Did your experience go away after I erased your brain?
No.
Just doing space work, which we teach in the in-person class. You can't really do it on Zoom. It's weird. You can.
I'm sorry. Who are you again? You just erased.
Have
you been here before?
Yeah. Yeah, let me
I need
paint.
to call security. There he is. He's
back.
Brian. He's back. He's back. Yeah, no, it sounds like, there's benefits to both.
Oh, absolutely.
But are you leaning into the in-person thing now that
we're
getting
doing
back
this
to it?
Sunday. a firm is coming and we're doing a boot camp, like an all-day thing. All their lawyers are coming. Also, it's not just for lawyers; it's support staff too. And we're doing an 8 hours boot camp. Instead of doing the 8-week class for them, they may do that. But then we have another structure that we do over 1 or 2 days. You know Daryl Isaacs? The hammer?
I know of him, yeah.
The Kentucky Hammer?
Right.
Brian? He flew me and Joseph out and we did a 2-day program for them. That was unbelievable. They have a courtroom, actually very similar to yours, and they were fantastic. And so, we could do it over a 1-day period, over a 2-day period. Like Rex Paris. That's very funny. I'll just tell you, 15 years ago, when Cale was like just a little kid, I went to Rex's house and we taught improv for trial way back.
Wow.
And then jumped to last year where now he's got 25 attorneys.
Yeah. And
we taught a boot camp for them over 2 days, which was unbelievable. And it's just it's team building. Also, it's great networking too, because imagine if you have 8 or 10 different lawyers from different firms or practices, you're connecting. And then you're also, we discuss cases during the class as well. There's an offshoot of Improv for Trial, which is, improvise your trial, where we do improvised trials. You bring us your case like, hey, Brian, let's do a focus group. It's not really a focus group. It's an improvised trial where we improv themes and ideas and come up with story for that particular case versus trying to convince a group of, potential jurors what this case is about.
Right.
It's developing the themes and the stories.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Through improv.
Through improv is 100%. Like we find out the story in the moment and then we're like, holy crap. Like the jury loved that, or the jury's like, don't do that.
Interesting.
That's very powerful.
So you do that with mock jurors.
Correct. And we get feedback. We have a moderator and we have closed caption TV. And we're like, well, what did you think of this? Like, how would this change? And then we'll come back in and do it.
Interesting.
Everybody comes back into the room. The jury's there. And now we redo. And they're like, oh, that was much better. Or that was, go back to the other version. Whatever. I mean, you're doing an improv. You have an audience there. Mm-hmm. It's like, it's like when you do a test audience for a film. How would you like to have seen the hero do this? Did you ever go to one of those?
I have not, but
they're fascinating because, in the business, where you would go and you'd watch a film and then they give you a thing, you fill it out like, did you like this story element? And then they invite you back and show you the recut.
Interesting.
It's fascinating. I mean, you're just reworking the story.
Right.
That's different than a focus group like, here's the evidence, because the evidence isn't going to change. It's
right.
the way you tell the story of the evidence, how you present it.
Absolutely. So in those situations, the mock jurors know the role of the attorney is representing the plaintiff.
Well, we tell them.
And they
don't know which side necessarily. We don't tell the jurors like, we're both from this same firm. We just tell them this is a real case. And
you give them both sides though?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
100%. Have to. It's more for the client too. I mean, like in this last case, Craig was so freaking shy. I wanted to see the worst version of him. I wanted to see the unpolished diamond version of his testimony. And they still loved him.
Right.
But the jurors, I actually had people from the focus group, it's the first time this ever happened, write me an email that said, we love your case. This is what you need to do. 2 people did that. And I was like, wow, they really were invested that after they left and got their check and their bag of chips and water, they still cared to write to us to say, when I left, I really thought that's crazy. That's awesome that they did that. And that was very powerful, very helpful.